The Ravens are the best team in football for like 3.5 quarters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They were demolishing arguably the best team in football.
Yeah.
Right? Smacking them around in their own digs.
Yeah.
The only, and with all due respect to the Chiefs, the Bills, the only team that can beat the Ravens is the Ravens. And they do it all the time.
They're great at it.
They are great. They're as good at beating themselves as they are running the football, throwing the football. And no matter whatever it is, whether it's they're forgetting their identity as far as running the ball, they forget to pass the ball. They didn't throw it a ton yesterday. They have missed field goals or extra points. The extra point would have been a tie game had they made that extra point.
Sweep to Zay Flowers on the second biggest play of the game instead of letting Lamar or Derrick Henry run the ball.
I mean, they do, unsportsmanlike penalties, taunting penalties. Whatever it is, they find a way to lose. And look, they have to me, their whole focus these 17 weeks coming up is you got to erase this from this is part of their culture. They got to erase this from their culture. And I think, Nick, the one, I don't want to say bright spot, but silver lining, the fact that they played Detroit, the Chiefs, and the Packers, I think that's good. Because they blow leads against bad teams too. Yeah. But I think playing those elite teams is going to be good for them. They need to win those games, or at least some of them. But I think that's going to be good for them because this is ridiculous. Well, I mean, it was like a blowout. I was like,
no, it was.
I ain't never seen the team
utterly
offensively
performance.
at least.
And there's a million numbers. Teams that score 40 points and rush for that many yards were 277-0. That's no longer the case. We've seen the numbers. We've seen the 17 now blown double-digit leads for Harbaugh. The most of any coach. Yeah. They say the stat you're going to see is since 1991. It's not because in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a coach that blew a bunch of leads. It's because that's as far back as we can get the data.
Right.
Like, it could be forever, but that's as far back as we can get it. So my answer is what happened to Bruce Ravens is what always happens to Bruce Ravens because they are a situationally inept football team. And I am so sick and tired of being lectured. I'm not talking about you, Brew, because it's hard to really feel like you're being lectured when the guy's got sunglasses on and eating a fake sandwich. I am so sick and tired of being lectured by folks who truly believe they understand football at a deeper level than us Neanderthals, who think the team that always finds a way to lose isn't historically great. Because listen, I'm only 40 years old, but every single other historically great team sometimes wins. Every other historically great team, part of their story is these types of wins, not always these types of losses. And it was, last year I was talking about Lamar specifically in the postseason. I never delete tweets and I never edit tweets, but I was upset with my phrasing of a tweet last night that made it seem like I was saying this was Lamar because it obviously was not Lamar. It is, but my point was he is a great player on a great team that this always happens to. The team, this always happens to him. And it didn't have to happen last night, by the way, because even after the fumble, even after the comeback, even after all of that, all John Harbaugh had to do was think back to what he did in week 2 against the Chiefs 5 years ago. Up 1 on his own side of the field in 4th and short when he said it was 35-36 Baltimore. Yep. He was like, I'm not giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. Yep. I'm going for it. And I understand Lamar said he had a cramp. You know what you do then? You go to the line. You try to draw. First of all, Buffalo had called timeout. So you have 2 minutes there. Then Lamar, you go to the line. You try to draw him off sides. If you don't, you have 40 seconds, then you call one of your timeouts.
Sure.
And then you determine, are we going for it? And if the answer is no, you go try to draw them offsides again, and then you punt. What you don't do is give the ball to Josh Allen. So the Derrick Henry fumble was unlucky because he's a great player, doesn't make those types of mistakes.
And he said it was all, I obviously it was a bad fumble, but I don't blame, like, they're not in that position without him. He was fantastic.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And listen, those people are going to make physical errors. Like, that's going to happen. It was coaching malpractice might be strong, but 1 degree less to punt the ball away to Josh Allen in that game.
No, I don't know if that's 100% true. We're going to talk about that, but I want to circle back because Nick just went on this really passionate rant about the Ravens and criticizing people for speaking about football when they clearly don't know football and all of this. And yet he said that the Ravens played poor situational football. Like, that's why they keep finding themselves losing games. Yet all season long and postseason and playoff, and after the, after the season, he rips Lamar Jackson. He's constantly framing it as if Lamar Jackson is the reason why the Baltimore Ravens come up short, right? He hangs the banners. He says Lamar Jackson is James Harden. Says that he's, I forget what other players he uses, Aaron Judge and whatnot. And now you can see on full display that here's a moment that the Ravens lose. Now, the difference is that Lamar Jackson didn't have any, checks next to the box score that you could say, oh, he made a mistake here, right? Like an interception or a fumble. So you can't hide behind that because there's plenty of games that Lamar Jackson plays amazing, but yeah, he turns the ball over, has an interception, just like I point out with Mahomes and Burrow and Brady and Manning and et cetera, but it's not the reason why they lose. It's the situational aspect. It's the team coming up short, not necessarily Lamar Jackson. Now, you can still point out that Lamar Jackson needs to play better in those moments, and that's fair. But I take such issue that when Nick clearly says, oh, the Baltimore Ravens lost this ball, it was coaching malpractice. How do you call that play? How do you do this? Where's any of that energy in 23 and 24? Where is any of that energy? Where is any of that explanation when you're dropping banners, just ripping Lamar Jackson for having, what is it? Oh, like one of the worst. He has some stat that he shows where it's just like, it's like a bad playoff win percentage based on, I guess, like how many starts you have or who you are. Like, it's up there with like Dak Prescott or whatever. Highlighting that rather than pointing out this stat is misleading because this implies that Lamar Jackson is not as great as he is or that he can't play well in the playoffs, etc., etc., etc. And I agree with what Bruce is saying about in terms of, because now some people are trying to blame Derrick Henry, and I do think that the fumble, it is unlucky because you're guaranteed to have a fumble, to throw an interception, to have some of these turnovers that happen throughout the season, and it's just unlucky that it decided to happen that game. It's like when Christian McCaffrey fumbled in the Super Bowl. It's just like, it just happens, right? That it's got to happen sometime. I always like to use Steph Curry as an example because it's like he's an elite shooter and clearly can handle the moment. And yet in playoff games, sometimes he goes 3 for 10. Does that mean he's not a good shooter? Does that mean that he can't handle them? No. It's just sometimes you're just going to go 3 for 10 from the 3. Sometimes you hit 15 free throws in a row. Sometimes you go 14 for 16. Those 2 free throws that he missed, is it because he just wasn't good? Because he got the moment, got to him in the PL? No, of course not. It just happens, and we don't look at it as much like that in football because they're there seems to be a lot more of a chance aspect when you're shooting, because you recognize that you can't make every single shot when you shoot in basketball. People understand that logically, but in football, we don't look at that in terms of interceptions and fumbles and just inaccurate throws. We try to reduce it to too zoomed into the moment and be like, you got to make that. You can't turn the ball over. It's like, well, you're guaranteed to at least turn the ball over sometimes. It's guaranteed to happen. Now, of course, if it always keeps happening in the playoffs again and again and again, that's a different discussion, right? That is a discussion that is worth having. But it still has to be looked at in the context of a game of someone's career, comparing it to other greats, which is what I think I've done plenty of times in the past. But here's the thing. So I know Harbaugh's getting a lot of blame for this loss, and I talked about this a little bit in my previous video, and now Nick is saying, like, this is malpractice. You can't give the ball back to the Buffalo Bills. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, because I understand Josh Allen and the Bills were starting to roll and get momentum. If you can't trust your defense to come up with a huge key stop, I don't know what to tell you, then you can't expect to win. You can't expect to win. You just can't. You got to be able to trust your defense to be able to get the job done. You just have to, I mean, again, we love to twist our memories of the greats, whether it's Manning, Mahomes, at, whatever it may be. Like, let's just, I use Mahomes so frequently just because it's the most recent one, obviously. But like so many of his massive moments, the defense made a huge stop after Mahomes either took the lead or needed to keep the game within the balance. And I showed you that clip before of Drew Brees discussing that, and he had the actual number of, like 20, whatever it was. And it's just like so many of Mahomes's like game-winning drives, clutch moments. Like the defense created the opportunity. Mahomes brought it home, but the defense created the opportunity. You need to be able to rely on your defense. Now you could say, well, hey, you know what? The way this game was unfolding, you couldn't. So you needed to put it in Lamar's hands or something. And I get that conceptually. I do. But you got to be able to trust your defense. I mean, week 1, because you got to be able to also build confidence in your defense. You have to be able to say, you got to be able to slow down Josh Allen just once. You got to just slow them down. So I wouldn't say malpractice a decision, and I think it's worth the discussion, and you could think about it. So I get it, I do. So I'm not saying that it's one answer is definitely the other answer. I think it depends, right? Like I think that's when I think it deserves some contemplation, honestly, in terms of trying to figure that out. But I remain firm that you should feel great in a lot of ways about this game from a Baltimore Ravens perspective, because this Ravens team, I watched every single game, and this offense you're watching, and you're just like, I don't understand how anybody could ever stop this team. I don't know. Understand how anybody could stop this offense. I mean, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, just the two of them alone, it looks like that they could win 2 versus 20. I mean, it just looks unbelievable. The fact that they can hang all those points and win the way that they win and not even need Lamar Jackson to throw 20 times. And he only had 6 carries. So it's not like it was like a high volume run game where like he had to run like 10, 11, 12 times. I mean, like it's absolutely remarkable. It really is. And Lamar Jackson was continuing the trend, the Ravens in general continuing the trend of last year into this year, of just being able to throw to guys wide. I mean, that's what happens when you're just gashing in the run game too, is that there's just so many guys wide open. And in the moments that you need Lamar Jackson to kind of bail you out, even when he gets himself in trouble, right? Technically, he kind of gets himself in trouble with almost taking that huge sack. And at one point, he did take a big sack, but then he finds himself out of it. I mean, it was going to be like, what? Like a 20-yard loss turned into like a 20-yard gain. I mean, like, just remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. But they don't even necessarily even need it. Like, that's the thing. Lamar Jackson could have either just taken a sack, like a regular sack, rather than him obviously going that far back, or even just thrown the ball away, and like it wouldn't even mattered. And so that's the thing. It's like if the Baltimore Ravens won this game, like Lamar Jackson's already great, like that need no confirmation. But the conclusion of that game would have been like, man, they were dominating in that game. And they didn't even need Lamar Jackson to necessarily be dominant. Again, he showed his greatness, but like they didn't even need his greatness necessarily. They didn't need his dominance. They didn't need a special performance out of Lamar Jackson. And yet, they still were able to just score at will. I mean, like that to me, like if you're a Raven, you're like, all right, like that's exciting. That should be repeatable. When you see how the Chiefs defense looked like against the Chargers, you're like, we could tear that apart. When you're looking and see what Dak Prescott did against Eagles, you're like, we could tear that apart. You saw what you did against the Bills. Like again, just look at the teams that you will potentially have to face in the playoffs. The Chargers, the Broncos, the Steelers, the Bills, the Chiefs. Defensively, you should fear none of them. None of them. And now defensively, in terms of like your own defense, obviously, you went up against Josh Allen, who needed to potentially play the greatest game of his career. Not obviously the most meaningful. We could talk about some of the bigger moments in playoffs and whatnot. But in terms of just maybe like pure production, what was asked of him to do, maybe you could make the argument against the Rams last year. They needed, regardless whether it was the greatest game he ever played, it was still histo, like he still needed to be out of this world great just to sneak on by. You did not need Lamar Jackson to be out of this world great, and you were on pace of having a dominant win. I mean, like, I just hope that puts things in context here. So that's why it's like, I don't know if the conversation is coaching malpractice or what about the fumble. Like, I don't know if that's the conversation, at least right now, right? I'm not so sure. And again, I've criticized Hall Harbaugh plenty. Ripped him in 23, ripped him in 24. Believe me, like it was one of the most surprising things to see that Harbaugh is not discussed more in the media in terms of people calling him out for losses and whatnot, and everyone oftentimes pointing behind Lamar Jackson. And I just think that this time around, because think about this. So Derrick Henry fumbles the ball, and they're like, well, it's just going to happen. Mental or physical mistakes, and I don't even call them mistakes. It's the wrong word, honestly. You know it happens. What if Lamar Jackson got stripped and it was a fumble? Like, what if that was Lamar Jackson? Everybody would have blamed Lamar Jackson for that loss. Seriously, think about it. If Derrick Henry didn't fumble and it was Lamar Jackson and they just punched the ball out, they would have said, see, that's Lamar Jackson. He lost the game. And that would not be the conclusion. It's a shame that I landed on that so much later in the clip, but it's just like, that's interesting to me. And yet in the playoffs, there is that fumble or that turnover, so people could be like, see, it's Lamar. So yeah, I don't know. This game was wild. I don't think anyone has to overreact just yet, because you needed such a historically great game out of Josh Allen just to barely lose. But it is still something to keep in mind. and it is something that we have seen be problematic in the playoffs, especially in terms of game plan and play calling and whatnot. So that is something, but it almost feels that the Baltimore Ravens should be so good that it almost shouldn't matter. Now, if it does matter in the playoffs, it's a different conversation. But if you were to have a rematch against the Buffalo Bills next week, I think at this point you'd be out of your mind to not pick the Ravens to potentially blow out the Bills again. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Baltimore Ravens? Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry coming up short, 4,140, lost to Buffalo. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.